What's up, everybody? Welcome into Fantasy Fire and Ice NFL Edition, brought to you by Sportstopia. I'm Simon, joined by Stu, aka Monotone Football, here to break down some week one and a week ahead at some week two waivers, some game lines, some player props. We got it all going on today's show. What's up, Stu?
Nothing much, man. Week two is kind of my favorite time of the year, right? We just now got to see all these guys that we've been thinking about, writing about, talking about, actually play real football, right? It's not the preseason. It's real snaps, real actionable information that we can make decisions off of. And yeah, we're going to still say a lot of stupid stuff throughout the rest of the season. We're still going to overreact because that's
100%.
what fantasy football is at the end of the day. But no, I'm super excited. I really do think this is the time of year where you can kind of get that edge, right? You can see what you've learned. You can see what everyone else has learned, and you can really make those decisions that will hopefully help your season, right? Especially on the waiver wire and fantasy football, or if you're a bettor, on the sports betting lines this week.
I'm with you, Stu. On the waiver wire article that's going to be coming out a little bit later today on Sportstopia, I highlighted exactly that. This waiver run arguably can be the most important of the season because we have such a limited sample size. You're having to take a little bit of a risk, a little bit of a gamble. We're trying to read what is an overreaction and what is just a proper reaction. Is Kenneth Gainwell truly the RB1 on the Philadelphia Eagles? You know what I mean? Those are the questions that we're asking ourselves this week. And if you read that one right, if Kenneth Gainwell is the RB1 ahead of DeAndre Swift and you make that pickup week one, that's potentially a league-winning kind of move. But by the same token, maybe you drop 30% of your fab on, I don't know, Marquez Callaway because he had a big week one like he did a couple years ago, and you're just sitting there not really feeling so good about it. But we're going to try to help you make sense of some of that today. Joining us as well to help us make sense of these week two waiver wire picks is our friend Terrell Furman. What's up, Terrell?
Oh man. I just cannot believe how bad and terrible it is to be a New York sports fan. I mean, it doesn't matter. At this point, I think it's a very good debate between Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, and Josh Allen, who the best quarterback in New York is. It's a very reasonable debate. I feel like it's a very good conversation to be had here because all three of them suck.
Zach Wilson was the quarterback for the catch of the year so far.
And Zach Wilson is the only one of those three that has a win.
1-0, Zach Wilson. Doesn't get the start, but he's getting that win in that game. Man, I can't believe we made it even 2 minutes into the show without bringing up that insane game that took place last night. That felt broken. And I have to think, I was sitting there the whole time, like whenever the Chiefs lost to the Lions, I'm sitting there thinking, the Bills have to be so happy right now, right? Get that free one-game advantage, trying to earn that bye, and then they go out there and lose to the Zach Wilson-led Jets. 4 turnovers just makes the loss extra brutal. They couldn't capitalize on a weird week one for the Chiefs as well.
And I know our guy Terrell already kind of came in here a little hot, but do you guys think that the Bills are actually going to get a little bit shielded for maybe the what they deserve this week due to the fact that New York is the story, right? Every single report we're seeing so far is about Aaron Rodgers. It's about the Jets. It's not actually about how poorly really the Bills performed, especially in the second half of that game. So I'm wondering maybe the Bills get a little bit of shelter from all this, drama right now.
That's what happens when you're irrelevant. That's what happens when you're irrelevant. I mean, when nobody cares about you, nobody talks about how good or bad you do. It doesn't matter what happens to the Giants or the Jets. Now that they had Aaron Rodgers, they were getting pressed, but they weren't even getting pressed for a while. It was all about what's going on with the Giants. So, I mean, when you're irrelevant, people don't talk about you losing 4 straight Super Bowls or anything like that.
It's a gift that the Bills gave to both the Chiefs and the Bengals. Right. I think the Bills being a part of this game against the Jets with the Aaron Rodgers storyline, we're not going to be talking as much about are the Chiefs overrated, are the Bengals overrated. We've moved past it. Like everyone's already saying, just a weird week one. The Bills, though, they gave a present. They gift wrapped a week off of the scrutiny that those two teams would have gotten with that abysmal performance yesterday. And Terrell, you're right. If Josh Allen, there was some questionable decisions that he made yesterday. Like a lot of those turnovers were just on him. It wasn't like Patrick Mahomes pick 6, right? Where it was bobbled up by a defender. This was Josh Allen making decisions that I feel like we haven't seen him make since his rookie year. These are the kind of things that he eliminated. So I'm hopeful that they turn it around, but Terrell, it sounds like maybe you're a little less optimistic for this Bills team.
Oh yeah. I mean, Josh Allen interception was the easiest prop that I had out last night, and it cashed rather easily with the just terrible throw into double coverage all the way downfield where it didn't even, oh, he's down there somewhere, I'm just throw him and he'll come up and down with the ball. Like, absolutely not. At this point, I'm curious if Brian Dable and Josh Allen miss each other so bad that they are trying to force a reunion by performing as worse as they possibly can to force a reunion with each other. That's what it feels like. Hopefully it's not, but we'll see.
We will see. Well, guys, if you were watching this, we got two people on here that are already hitting on props early in the season. So go ahead and go give them a follow on Twitter if you're not already. You can find Stu on Twitter at Monotone Football with one L right there below his face. And then Terrell's at ReallyRel _ right there below his face on the screen as well. We're going to get into some waiver wire here shortly. And oh boy, is it a big waiver wire week. A lot happened in week one. A lot of things that maybe we didn't expect. Backfield's playing out a little differently. Receivers stepping up when other receivers we thought we're going to do so. So we'll hit some of those, let you guys know who we think's worth adding, who we think is maybe some week one fool's gold, and go from there. Before we get into that, though, you guys see the QR code down here on the screen. A reminder, you can start a 7-day trial of the Fantasy Sports Logic Contrarian Optimizer for just $1 by scanning that QR code. Help you optimize your lineups heading into week 2. Get some of that cash from those GBP games and those big tourneys as well. But with that being said, you guys ready to talk some waiver wire?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I said, this is where you win, baby. This is where you win.
This is where you win. And I think we start with the wide receiver position. And we'll start with the name that everybody's been talking about here. Going into week 1, Cooper Kupp on the IR. I expected the established, more veteran receiver, Van Jefferson, at least in week 1, to maybe be the preferred target, not get that kind of Cooper Kupp volume. But then in comes rookie Puka Nacua getting Cooper Kupp volume. We're talking 15 targets, 10 receptions. Stu, I'm going to throw this one to you first. Is Puka Nacua the real deal, at least while Cooper Kupp is out?
I was going to say he is the real deal, but there is a little bit of an asterisk right there, right? I want as much Puka as I can get over these next couple weeks, especially if you're a wide receiver needy team. The problem is his upside is a little bit capped with Cooper Kupp coming off the IR and likely about 4 to 5 weeks right here. When you look at the kind of routes they run, it's very, very similar. There's a lot of slot targets. They were getting him open over the middle, which is obviously the number one McVay playbook kind of thing. Let him do work after the catch. All this kind of stuff that a lot of people that were projecting him to play well, successfully called in week 1. The biggest problem for me is still that 4-week kind of shelf life. I'm really worried what happens when we insert Cooper Kupp back into this offense. A lot of people expected the Rams to be absolutely awful. They come out and beat a division favorite in the game 1, right? They showed they were very impressive in game 1. I think this is a team that's going to be competitive. It doesn't look like they're trying to tank at all, right? I mean, we heard McVay was considering retiring before the season started. So it looks like this team's going to try to win. And for that reason, I'm a little bit worried once we get to week 4 or 5, once Cooper Kupp comes back. So I love Puka, but he's probably not going to be my number 1 waiver priority this week.
All in for the next 4 weeks, but worried whenever he comes back. Terrell, with that concern, are you feeling similarly to Stu here? And if so, what percentage of your fab are you willing to kind of throw at a player like Puka, who we're kind of looking at as a fill-in for the next 4 to 5 weeks?
Well, I mean, it depends who I am. If I'm the Cooper Kupp owner, I don't care about if he's a full 4-week fill-in. I want him now. I'm willing to pay whatever it takes to get him, and he's going to get me until Cooper Kupp comes back, and then I'm going to be forced to run Cooper Kupp out there, whether he's 100% or not. And so if I'm the Cooper Kupp owner, there's not a dollar amount on the fab that you could tell me to get me off of this, especially if I need another wide receiver to come in, especially if I'm somebody who maybe had a Deontay Johnson who looks like he's going to be out for a little while with a hamstring injury. So there's a whole bunch of situations of where if I needed somebody to fill in for the first, I know I got 4 weeks of Nacua. So that is definitely somebody I'm looking to. But let's not, he got 8 targets, brought down 6 of them, 119 as well. Tutu Atwell is a really, really good addition in deeper leagues. I'm talking about dynasty leagues, all this other stuff. Really good addition for these next 4 weeks for somebody that you need in maybe a second flex spot or something like that, because he's going to get the deep balls. He's going to get the efficiency. You look at what Stafford did. He had a 44-yard completion to Tutu Atwell in that game. So this is somebody that you can look for longest completion props on Stafford, on Atwell, all of this. That's somebody that I look for a little bit deeper of a stash when you're talking about these Rams wide receivers. So, of course, it's Nacua at the top. And if I'm the Kupp owner, I'm definitely grabbing Nacua. Doesn't care what the fab price is. But if I need somebody to stash in deeper leagues, I'm definitely going for a Tutu Atwell because he's going to get the deep balls.
Going back to what Stu said about the kind of routes that Puka Nacua is running versus the kind of routes that Tutu Atwell's running. Atwell's target share in this offense may be safer long term than Puka Nacua's is whenever Cooper Kupp comes back. The position that he's playing on this field, the role that he's playing in that offense may stay insulated. Now, that's not saying he's going to be consistent. He's going to be consistently inconsistent given the type of targets that he's getting on that field. But you're telling me we're not going to get a couple big Tutu Atwell games with the kind of arm that Matthew Stafford has in that Rams offense? They're coming. I'm with you, Terrell. I'm with you. I see Fantasy Sports Logic here in the chat saying Tom Brady's the pickup of the week next Jets QB. Did you see that graphic flying around, Stu, of Tom Brady in the Jets jersey?
Yeah, that's I know people are actually going to do this too. I know people, I know real people in my leagues are going to pick up Tom Brady. Don't do it. Even if you're the last waiver priority, even if it's free, Tom Brady is not coming back and playing for the Jets. So that's my official warning right here. Please do not waste your fab, your waiver priority, anything like that on picking up Tom Brady right now. That's a waste. Please don't do it.
I'd pick up Joe Flacco before I pick up
now,
Tom Brady right now. I feel like he's got a better
Phillip
shot.
Rivers has been carpooling for a long time now. Phillip Rivers might need some excitement in his life. I don't know. I might have to spend $1 on Phillip Rivers.
Just to get him out of the house. Too many kids in that minivan. He's gonna roll over there with Zach
got
Wilson.
Like 10 kids. He makes Nick Cannon look like a saint.
All right, well, guys, there was another wide receiver I wanted to bring up this week. Last year, a darling in that Jacksonville Jaguars offense, and then this year, I didn't call for him to be the wide receiver 2 after Calvin Ridley in this offense, but it seems like Zay Jones, at least on a 1-week sample size, was playing ahead of Christian Kirk on the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver depth chart. Terrell, are you buying into Zay Jones as the second option on this team ahead of a Kirk? And if so, is he someone you want to roster? He's currently only rostered in 37% of leagues on Sleeper right now, so he's probably out there on your waiver wire.
Yeah, maybe as a little bit of a deeper target, a little bit closer to wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 type range. I'm not really interested. I think that it's a dart on the board. This week is Zay Jones. Next week it could be Christian Kirk. Week after that, I don't know. Maybe, yeah, like Evan Ingram. It's so many different options that it could be. They have 100 ways to go with the football in this Jags offense. And, I mean, I think he's good for the fact that there is a possibility because we've seen Calvin Ridley in the past. We've seen him with injury issues in the past. We've seen him with gambling issues in the past. That is not, I mean, it's still, I'm not going to say it's 100% outright. He's learned his lesson. So I think that Zay Jones is a good late flex type of stash, especially if you want to get an additional wide receiver in there that has huge upside because if anything happens to Calvin Ridley, it's going to go back to him and Kirk being extremely valuable in this offense.
Stu, you feeling similarly about Zay Jones?
I have a little bit more of a positive path. Maybe it's biased. Maybe it's the 20% Zay Jones in best ball. But one thing I say we have learned, right? There's a little something there. But I think one thing I have learned this year is I need to start taking the preseason a little bit more seriously. I don't think I've done that as much in the past. I've tried to do that this year. What did we see in the preseason? On 2 wide receiver snaps, right? When they were taking a wide receiver off the field, it was Christian Kirk. He was the one leaving the field. We saw that exact same trend happen in week 1, right? When you're in those 2 wide receiver sets, you want to have Christian Kirk out there if you drafted him, right? But that just hasn't been the case. He's been getting the slot snaps. Zay Jones has been on the outside. And we got a Chiefs matchup this week. So if you're a wide receiver needy team and you're looking for someone to target, Zay Jones is going to be out there on probably 80+% of the routes run, and he's going to be out there against Patrick Mahomes. I would love Zay Jones this week if you need a wide receiver.
Yeah, I do have concerns that we are going to see a little bit of a rotating. Who's the guy that steps up for fantasy? Yeah. But if I need a relatively steady option on the waiver wire, it's Zay Jones when I'm looking at these options. I feel the most comfortable that his role in this offense is probably secure. Now, is he going to blow the roof off the building? No, but that 11.8 points or whatever he got you this week, you're thrilled with that, right? If he can get you, if you can put him in your lineup and he gets you 8 to 12 PPR points a week, you're not mad. Now, that may not be what you're looking for on the waiver wire in week 1, but there's also a lot of injuries out there already. So that may be exactly what you're looking for on the waiver wire in week 1.
Let me go to another wide receiver that has a little bit more ownership. I had him in the value finder for DFS this week in my article. Make sure you check that out at Sportstopia. And so Romeo Doubs, very, very good week. Wide receiver 8 on the week. Christian Watson dealing with the hamstring injury. Now, Doubs does have an hamstring injury as well, but it seems that his is less a little bit less serious as Christian Watson, and Watson could be nagging him for the course of the season. When Watson has been out, Dobbs has been a stud in fantasy outside of one game where he put up a dud against the Jets. He put up a dud against the Jets. You know, he's been averaging well over double-digit fantasy points in every game. Like I said, he was the wide receiver 8 this week with 2 touchdowns. I think that Dobbs, even when Watson comes back into the lineup, is very good slotting in as really not even a wide receiver 2. He's really the 1B, maybe the 1B in that offense, potentially could be the 1A if he continues the ball. And so I think that Jordan Love has proven that he can be competent at quarterback, and that has just made Dobbs so valuable. And what Stu was talking about, paying attention to preseason. Dobbs was really good in the preseason last year. We know he's a good wide receiver. It's just the injuries. And so I think that's somebody who's at about 45% ownership, somewhere around there. That should be all the way up to 70-80% ownership by now. No way that doesn't flip on his head after a 2-touchdown day in week 1 against the Bears.
I'm with you. And I think this is one of those situations we got to get better as fantasy managers, not just paying attention to the preseason, but attacking these uncertain situations or these situations where things are changing. We had a very small sample size of Christian Watson. What we knew, though, is we have 2 very talented wide receivers and a new quarterback coming in that we don't know who his preferred target is. Yeah, Christian Watson's ADP pumped all the way up to like that 4th, 5th round, and everyone's forgetting about Romeo Dobbs, myself included. Didn't draft enough of him. I bought into the Christian Watson was wide receiver 1 last year. He's going to be wide receiver 1 this year. Now, that still may very much be the case, but I'm with you, Terrell. This is worth taking a shot in week 1 after what we saw, after the way Jordan Love was peppering Dobbs with some targets in that game.
I may be somewhere around the 20% range in Dobbs best ball ownership.
So we're just
I may be somewhere around the 20% range in Dobbs best ball ownership.
Stu, how are you feeling about Dobbs with Watson supposedly coming back soon? Do you think that impacts his usage in this offense?
It definitely does, but I like what you said there. It's still kind of a 1A, 1B situation. All the training camp reports were great. And even in the face of that, people still, I think it's a lot of the analytics community coming into this. He maybe doesn't get more separation. He relies on the contested catch rate, which obviously, knocks you down in a lot of these systems that so highly reward separation. A guy like Jalen Reed was even getting drafted at some points as high as Romeo Dobbs at the end of the day. It felt like people were
that's crazy. Right? We have film on Dobbs. We have
Yep.
film. We know he's good. We know he's really good.
And hey, I like Reed too, but you got to remember, Reed was playing with his high school quarterback that peppered him with targets throughout all of his college career, right? So that hype, in my opinion, was getting a little bit insane. That's when, like you, I pivoted to Dobbs as well, and now I'm feeling a little bit better about it. The final thing I'll say about it too, we got to remember, this is a positive game script that the Packers likely won't be in as much this season. They're likely not going to be able to run the clock out and run the ball. They're going to be forced to pass. Teams want Jordan Love to beat you. They don't want Aaron Jones to beat you. So in the future, I think we're going to see even more pass attempts for a guy like Dobbs. And yeah, he was limited this week with the hamstring as well.
Yeah. Upside sitting there for a guy like Dobbs on the waiver wire. I want to mention one more player here, and then I'll throw it to you guys if there's any that we skipped over. Another low ownership player, someone that I think the entire community slept on as a whole, as the potential wide receiver 1 for the New England Patriots, and that's Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne had 11 targets in that game, out targeting every other wide receiver on that team. I think the wide receiver with the next most targets was Demario Douglas, who nobody else also drafted, sitting there with 7. Tight ends got involved a little bit, but Mac Jones looked like a for real NFL quarterback. I apologized yesterday for all of my love that went to Zappy during the offseason. Mac Jones, I owe you an apology. And if Mac Jones is going to play like that, I want his wide receiver 1 on my team. He's sitting at 2% ownership, and I think might get overshadowed by some of these other names on the waiver wire this week. Stu, are you buying into Kendrick Bourne as the top target on this team, or was this just a Bill Belichick week 1 game plan?
No, I've been a fan of Kendrick Bourne for years. He was in the Bill Belichick doghouse all of last year, but there was even opportunity where I thought he should have maybe had a chance to break out. He had a couple solid games. They signed him to a solid contract. If you want to go looking back, money talks, right? They actually wanted to make Bourne a part of the game plan. Now we're a little bit removed from that, and we're finally seeing what he can do. What I think about this is pretty simple. I don't trust this Patriots running game up the middle. I like Ramondre Stevenson as a pass catching back, but he still has a lot to prove to me as a between the tackles runner. Now we put the same thing with Ezekiel Elliott, who's been one of the least efficient between the tackles runners. How do we then supplement a bad rushing game? You get the short passing game going. You get these yak guys going. You get the yards after catch, the short crossing routes. That's where I think Kendrick Bourne comes into play. I think he has a lot of usage in the slot. I think they get him involved over the middle. He can even get some of those trick plays, end around kind of situation. I think Bourne is a very versatile wide receiver. I would love to have him at the end of my bench. And like you said, 5% ownership. Nobody cares about the Patriots. You're not going to have to spend a lot of fab for this guy. He might still be on the waiver wire by the time everything clears on Thursday. Muted.
Listening to the announcers, you would have thought Boutte was the wide receiver one for that Patriots team. They could not stop talking about that dude all game. But I'm with you. Kendrick Bourne, I think, is worth adding. Might be not my favorite ad from who I think is going to be the best, but from a amount you're going to have to spend and the value that you'll potentially get from them. Terrell, where are you standing on this? Are you as optimistic about a guy like Bourne?
No, I'm actually on the complete other side. Kendrick Bourne is my official. I'm about to start a new segment. My official. Trade him while you can. Trade him while you can. This is the highest stock you will get on Kendrick Bourne. We are on the corner like we got food stamps selling them 25 cents on the dollar. I'm telling you right now, go ahead and move him. Mac Jones threw 54 passes this game. He's never going to do that again all season. Like at all season, he's not going to throw that many passes again. They were down 16 at the end of the first quarter, and partially because of his fault. But so I think that while it was fun to see and it was cool to think about, I don't trust the Patriots offense. I don't think that Mac Jones is that prolific of a passer where he's going to go and have these huge totals where Kendrick Bourne can get 11 targets. Like, if I think the amount of tips is going to go down, then the amount of targets for Bourne is probably going to go down as well. So I have to see it again for Kendrick Bourne before I add him to a waiver wire pickup for myself. I got to see it one more time. If I have him already in a deeper league, I'm trying to move him, and I'm trying to take whatever I can get for him because I just don't think that he's going to be able to keep this up with that volume because I don't think that they're going to be in the game script. That was a better defensive game after the first quarter for the Patriots, where that actually showed where they're going to be. It was 16-0 in that first quarter, and then the Eagles ended with 25 points. They scored 9 points for the rest of the game. So that's the Bill Belichick defense I expect to see. And so I don't think that they're going to be trying to pass to keep up. I think that they're going to lean a little bit more on that run game. While it is a little bit flawed, I think that's where they prefer to play the football rather than going through the air 50 times with Mac Jones.
Man, this is one of the teams I'm most curious to see next week because I think I underplayed in my head how big of a impact negatively Matt Patricia had on that offense last year. Having Matt Patricia call plays, I'm trying to throw out all of my my biases from last season, what we saw, because man, that was brutal. And this offense already looks a lot different, but we got to see another week because that was a weird game script.
I am on the Pats this week, though.
You said you're on the Pats this week? You think they got it?
Yeah, give me Pats +2. This is the week. Come on now. Everybody saw everything Tua did. And the thing is, Tua made a lot of mistakes. You just can't make those mistakes against the Belichick defense.
It's the reverse now, where instead of the Pats or the Dolphins coming in and stealing one from the Pats are coming in and stealing one from the Dolphins. Yep. Before we get into running backs, we got a question here. So maybe looking for some waiver wire advice from our friend Ryan, giving us this lineup. Got Lamar Jackson at quarterback. I'm sorry about your week one. Kenneth Walker, Alexander Madison at RB, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Kincaid at tight end, and AJ Brown in that flex.
Yeah, your week one sucked.
Yo, that's brutal.
Sorry. I didn't mean to say it like that.
Wants to know what he's got to do going forward. Dude, you're good. This is a good team. It was a brutal week one. I'm not saying don't make some pickups, but you got a great team sitting here. Stu, when you're looking at this, are there any moves or any position groups you're looking at improving on the week one waiver wire?
Yeah, we got to address the running backs, right? The Alexander Madison is a red flag for me right now. I would be very worried if you rostered Alexander Madison heavily. I mean, from the week one performance we saw right there, that wasn't great. It also kind of tells you a story about this Vikings team that maybe we were overrating a little bit coming into the season, right? Do we really expect them to be in these positive game scripts where they can run the ball comfortably? I'm not so sure. Alexander Mattison did not look particularly good against a defense that it's not like people came in the year singing the praises of the Buccaneers defensive line or their defense. They obviously do have a strong history of that defensive line, but we got to remember they've lost some pieces. This is not the same Super Bowl team. So for me, I think the clear position you got to target is obviously the running back. The rest of your team, like they said, is looking great. But if you are going to make some waiver wire choices, I know we're about to get into the running backs right now. I think that's where I'd be targeting.
Yeah, we're going to talk some running backs right now. And I wanted to start off. I kind of got running backs in categories this week. There's a couple different types of running backs on the waiver wire you can pick up. The group I want to start with first is the starters we didn't know were starters. The guys that went out there and had a starting job that we didn't expect. There's two names that I'm sitting there looking at the waiver wire, and that's Kyren Williams on the Los Angeles Rams, and that's Kenneth Gainwell on the Green Bay Packers. Terrell, I'll throw this one to you first. When looking at those two names, are you buying into either one or both of those guys as the RB1 on their team? They both out-carried Cam Akers for Kyren Williams and DeAndre Swift for Kenneth Gainwell, but man, that goes against what we thought was going to happen.
So Kenneth Gainwell, I'm not surprised at all. And maybe it's because NFC East aficionado here or anything like that. Not surprised. Gainwell's been there before. He's been a really good back. But Kyren Williams effectively not only dominated, he just looked better. Like, he just looked way better. And if you roster Cam Akers, one, shout out to you for rostering Cam Akers. I think I have zero ownership in Cam Akers in any possible fantasy situation possible. So a very, very shout out to you, and shout out to the Sharps that got down on Kyren Williams because you're ahead of everybody. I think that is the changing of the guard. Honestly, I just can't. He just completely looked better. There now, you could tell me, it could have been a situation with the Eagles. We've seen the Eagles rotate backs around. One game, it's freaking Miles Sanders last year. Another game, it might have been Ken Gainwell. Another game, it was Boston Scott. We've seen them rotate those backs around. So I could sit on DeAndre Swift and say, all right, it just wasn't his day. Cam Akers has no excuse. He just wasn't good. And I think didn't Cam Akers get like 20 carries?
22 carries, I think, in that game.
And he had like 20-something yards. It's actually impressive. Like, that's genuinely impressive because I think I potentially could have did the same thing.
Yeah, 22 carries, 29 yards.
I might have been in the backfield and I might have negative yards, but that's not that big of a jump. It's not that big of a jump. So it's very similar to what I could have done if you put me in pads out there to what Cam Akers did with 20 attempts. And that is the biggest red flag for me.
1.3 yards per attempt on over 20 carries is a brutal number. That's a Cam Akers number right there. Stu, are you feeling similarly? Because I'm in line with Terrell that if I'm believing the hype on one of these guys, it is Kyren Williams, just based on how the other backs looked. I still believe in DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, no, this needs to be your priority. Kyren Williams. For me, Kyren Williams is one of my highest owned best ball players this year. The only negative that comes with that is obviously a lot of Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor on those teams as well. So I'm not swimming in money quite yet. But I loved Kyren Williams because for me, he was the clear pass catching back. Everyone was seemingly ignoring this with Sean McVay quotes and various, preseason training camp reports. But from everything I was reading from the Rams beat writer, it was clear, even no matter what happened, from day one, Kyren Williams was likely going to get some chances in the 2-minute drills, in the negative game scripts as the pass catching back. Now, after game one, we've clearly seen, with obviously how bad Cam Akers has been out there, that Kyren Williams can now fill a little bit more of that between the tackles role. It is so rare that you get a chance to get someone that has bell cow upside on the waiver wire at this point of the season. That, Kyren Williams is a clear ad for me. I mean, I love the pass catching upside. I think they're going to be still trailing a decent amount this season. But now that he's proven himself as a between the tackles runner, which, by the way, if you watch him at Notre Dame, that's what he did there as well. He was a between the tackles guy as well. So we do have a past pedigree of that being successful right there. I think he's the clear number one target of the week on the waiver wire for me.
I'm with you. And my fellow zero RB drafters, this is your guy. This is the move this season. This is this season's Phillip Lindsay. This season's James Conner. This is the guy that you want to pick up that you're going to start every week the rest of the season. And when you're looking at your championship at the end of the year, Kyren Williams is going to be sitting there right there in your RB2 slot, most likely. I'm with you guys. I am all in on Kyren Williams this week as the top running back pickup. Terrell, I hear some hesitation from you. Is there another back that you're prioritizing over Kyren this week?
Well, one, I'm trying to figure out how Kyron Williams has 2 reception yards and no receptions. I've been trying to figure that out all week.
And that's a
But
great point to bring up too, is we didn't even see his receiving work kind of coming to the game here.
but he
Only
got
got
2
two
targets. Yeah,
Yeah.
he got 2 targets. And so the issue for me is that, again, we talk about how bad Cam Akers was. Kyron Williams still got 15 carries. And 52 yards, 3.5 per carry. It's not good. So you're telling me between those two, they took home 37 carries in this game in a Matthew Stafford led offense. I just don't think that's going to happen at week to week. And so while Kyron Williams is like, big sexy right now, and he'll probably get the goal line work, but that's just too much touchdown upside for me, and it's probably a little bit better in best ball. You can roll the dice and just say, hey, he may get a touchdown this week, he may not, but it feels like it's extremely touchdown upside where I'm not going to get the explosive plays, the big running plays, or the receiving aspect as well. So while I do like a Kyron Williams, and if I'm dead hurt on running back, I'm going to take him. I'm not going to break the bank. I would much rather spend more fab on a Nakua or an Atwell than on Kyron Williams. He's probably the third person on this Rams team that I would want in terms of free agents.
Some capped upside stopping you from going all in there on a guy like Kyron. I want to talk a little bit about this Baltimore running back situation. J.K. Dobbins out for the season. Absolutely brutal for Ravens fans, for Dobbins, and for managers that were bought into the talent finally showing up on the field this year. We got 3 running backs, though, that are in the picture here. I know most people are just talking about 2, but we got to talk about all 3 of them here. We got Justice Hill, we got Gus Edwards, and we got Melvin Gordon. Justice Hill, shockingly, got the goal line work over the running back literally built to be a goal line bowling ball, Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards, again, averages over 5 yards a carry in his career, was 4 yards a carry in this game. We know what kind of back he is, but what we saw in that game was a dead even split between him and Justice Hill. And now here comes Melvin Gordon off the practice squad. John Harbaugh saying good things about him, adding him to the team. Stu, what do you make of this situation? Which of these 3 backs are you prioritizing?
Yeah, this was a sad week for me because I have a lot of Gus Edwards. Like you kind of said with the 5 yards per carry, I believe in him as a real life player, no matter what. So when I'm at the end of my best ball drafts and when I'm at the end of my fantasy drafts, for me, I want to prioritize guys that I think are legitimately good players, right? Because it is a little bit less common in those rounds. The problem is he is so touchdown dependent in this offense. And now you're talking about a touchdown dependent running back playing with Lamar Jackson, playing with Mark Andrews, and now playing with another running back who stole his 2 touchdowns in the last game. And obviously Melvin Gordon, we know, has been a traditional goal line running back. I know you said we have to talk about all 3. I don't agree with that. Don't pick up Melvin Gordon. I don't want to think about Melvin Gordon at all.
That's talking about him.
Okay. That's fair. But for me, the point is, as a huge Gus Bus owner, right, as a huge fan of him personally, I'm not going to be rolling him out this week as a starter. And that's even with some pretty rough running back weeks. I just talked about how I got 4 points from Antonio Gibson a little bit earlier. I'm probably going to have to run Antonio Gibson out there ahead of Gus Edwards just because he's so touchdown dependent. And I just don't see the upside considering he didn't get the goal line work in the last game.
Terrell, are you feeling similarly here about the backs here in Baltimore? Maybe no real upside for any of them. It sounds like they're eating into each other.
I think that you got to play it week by week, and you got to pick your spots of when you have, a soft run defense. That's what Gus Edwards always has been. If you have a soft run defense, he's going to kill you. But if you're somebody competent, he's not going to go out here like Nick Chubb and just completely run people over and continue to get it. That's why J.K. Dobbins was a thing and why J.K. Dobbins wanted to get paid. And it's because that J.K. Dobbins has that burst. He has that acceleration, that speed. He makes big plays when he's running the football. Gus Edwards, big plays, a little bit more limited, even though he's still a really, really good back for this offense. And so it's the same thing with Kyron Williams for me. Like, I'm not overly jumping to go grab a Gus Edwards. I'm not going to break the bank to go grab him because I don't think he's that much of a league winner for me. I think that he's going to be a good piece. I think that he'll be a good spot start, and I'll probably get lucky a week or two and he falls into the end zone when I start him. But to go out there and say that I'm allocating a certain portion of my fab budget or I'm using my number 1 waiver priority, absolutely not.
Yeah. And let me just say, too, I would say the one differentiator for me is a guy like Kyron. I see him possibly growing into that RB1 role, right? I would not be surprised to see Cam Akers cut, demoted, all of the above, because we've seen that in the past in his career. It's not looking like the case with the Ravens. The Ravens love running back by committees. It's what they've done in the whole Harbaugh era, right? There's never really been that sole guy. We were kind of hoping Dobbins would be, but now that he's out, it's kind of clear they're going back to the committee. So for me, I agree with you. I don't see that league winning upside, but I do think there's a reason that these guys are in different tiers than a guy like Kyron, who I do think has a possibility to get there at some point this year.
I love that call out. So we've talked about the starters that we didn't expect to be starters. The next group, those Ravens running backs. You got to figure out what to do with the Ravens. The next group of backs are the high-value backups. And now one of these guys technically did out-carry the other guy on the roster, but I'm under no presumptions that Tyler Algier is a starting running back in Atlanta. Bijan Robinson is going to out-carry him by the end of the season. But I'm putting Joshua Kelly sitting there behind Austin Eckler. He had a lot of carries this week. I know it came out that Austin Eckler was dealing with a little bit of an injury, but we also have a new offensive coordinator in town, Kellen Moore, who has shown that he uses two backs pretty effectively. And then Tyler Algier in Atlanta, out carrying Bijan Robinson in week 1, getting those touchdowns after being nice enough to give the first one to the rookie. Terrell, when looking at these two backs, these kind of high-value backups, maybe they've got standalone value on their own. How are you prioritizing them on the waiver wire this week?
Joshua Kelly is interesting because I do think that he, as being a handcuffed Austin Eckler, already gives value. And I think that he probably should have been drafted off of that alone, not expecting him to go 16 for 91 and a touchdown in week 1. And so Joshua Kelly already has some interest in me just because I know that if Austin Eckler goes down, he's going to get a pretty sizable workload. And I know that from what it seems, there could be, conspiracy theorists. I'm a conspiracy theorist, but
it's here.
Because Brandon Staley is a terrible head coach. And so if you're telling me that Kellen Moore is highlighting running backs to take the eyes off of Herbert so that Staley can get going, and then he's going to make Herbert into a star, Wembley, I would believe you. I would believe you. And so I think that they're going to run the ball. I think they're going to run the ball. Now, I'm curious on how much was it the Chargers or was it the Dolphins? And that's what we're going to figure out when we put bets in and go fantasy this week. Is it the Chargers that are going to go out here? Doesn't matter what team they're playing. They're going to run the ball 30 times consistently between those two and give them both split carries? Or is the Miami Dolphins run defense that bad that you can start the starting running back, you can start the backup running back, and they're going to have a workload and they're going to be able to do something against them? That's the thing that I'm trying to figure out as we go on from week 1 to week 2. But as of right now, I can buy into Kelly because not only does it look like he have some flex appeal on his own, he is automatically into RB2, maybe even RB1 discussion if Austin Eckler ever goes down.
Those are the kind of backups that you look for on the waiver wire as well. The ones that it is clear if the back in front of them goes down, they're stealing it, and you can still throw them in the flex. Stu, on the other side of this, Tyler Algier, are you buying into him as a weekly startable player given his usage in week 1?
Yeah, weekly startable is a little bit of a push for week 2, I think. But as someone that needs to be on your roster, if he isn't for whatever reason, right, if he's on the waiver wire in your league or something like that, then you got to go get Tyler Algier. Because what I've seen on Twitter a lot this morning is a lot of guys coming out here, a lot of the same guys that told you to draft Bijan Robinson in the top 6, 7 are now telling you not to panic about Bijan Robinson. And listen, I wouldn't panic in the sense that he's clearly still a startable asset, a guy that you're comfortable with in that running back position in a week out basis. But when you draft a guy like Bijan Robinson ahead of an Austin Eckler, ahead of a Nick Chubb, that means the running back number 1 overall spot needs to be in your reasonable range of outcomes, right? You want that. You want a guy that it's not a long shot for him to be the RB1 overall. I think it's now a long shot for Bijan Robinson to be the RB1 overall. He didn't get a red zone carry. Those are the most important carries to get. And when you look at their build, Tyler Algier is built as well to be a goal line back right there. He's also running routes. The one thing we can say, obviously, the target share, I think 35% plus for Bijan. You love to see that. Given it's going to be an offense that passes 15 times a game, you don't love to see that.
Maybe.
I'm worried about those red zone touches. Algier is going to be part of the game plan. He's going to be there week in, week out. Arthur Smith absolutely loves to run the ball. So for me, I'm not pumping the brakes on a guy like Bijan. He's still going to be a great running back for you, but don't panic. It's time to readjust your expectations a little bit on what this rushing attack is going to look like this year.
The good news that we have is that you mentioned it already. They love to run the ball, and that might be an understatement. Bijan Robinson can get 250 plus carries, and Tyler Algier can still be fantasy relevant week in, week out because of the just amount of volume that's going to run through the running game in this offense. Let's hit on some of these. Oh, go ahead, Terrell.
No, that's just a quick on Bijan. That's what I think, at some point, this is my big call for the year. At some point, fantasy operators everywhere are going to change Bijan Robinson's designation from running back to running back / wide receiver.
Oh, you think so?
I think
we're going to hit that time on
he was lining
from a couple years ago.
He led the team in targets. He led the team in catches. He was lining up in the slot. Essentially, is he not doing everything Cordell Patterson was doing? He's literally Cordell Patterson but better. And if that's the case, one, they're definitely going to change his designation. But two, that definitely opens the path for Bijan to be relevant while Tyler Algier is also relevant. So I think that now it looks weird because he's in the RB slot, but something's just telling me, because you look at how the targets were distributed, 18 targets, he got 6 of them. Drake London, the quote-unquote number 1 wide receiver, got 1 target. Kyle Pitts got 3 targets. Mac Hollins got 4 targets. Week 1, don't want to jump the gun too much, but if this keeps up, there is going to be a situation where they're probably going to say we might need to change Bijan to a wide receiver.
Man, throwing him in a wide receiver slot, open that up. If you got that running back depth, that could be fun for your teams. And we always love seeing a player change designation, especially mid-season, makes it a little bit of fun. I think the last time we had that happen was Taysom Hill getting that
tight end slot.
Yeah, quarterback tight end / eligibility. And now he just lives in that tight end slot. Speaking of Taysom Hill, let's hit on some tight ends real quick here. And I said, speaking of Taysom Hill, don't pick up Taysom Hill if he's sitting on your waiver wire. There's 3 names I wanted to bring up here. 4 maybe. There's some gross ones sitting out there on the waiver wire, but I'm going to start with one that I think is not gross, and that's Hayden Hurst on the Carolina Panthers. Our boy Cody Carpentier here at Sportstopia was calling him as a must-draft player before we got into the season. Terrell down there calling him as a must-draft player as well. And it looks like, given the other receiving options there, that Hayden Hurst has a real path to being the top target on this team. Terrell, you were in on him preseason. Are you staying in on Hayden Hurst? Is he your top tight end ad this week?
Yeah, I had him in the Value Finder article on Sportstopia, and he was my top tight end for price and value in terms of DFS. He was going as tight end 20 something. He was all the way at the bottom, and he ended up finishing as the tight end 2, only behind Hunter Henry, who is also at the bottom. So it's Hayden Hurst is my sell him while you can guy. You sell him while you can. Absolutely sell him while you can, because I think that as time starts to go on and Bryce Young starts to get more comfortable, Hayden Hurst is slowly going to fall out. We've seen Hayden Hurst do this last season where he's had big weeks and then he's fallen off, and then next thing you know, he's towards the bottom, and that was playing with Joe Burrow. Now it's Bryce Young, and again, DJ Chark is not here. He didn't play in that game. Adam Thielen was limited in that game, so they didn't really roll him out there that much. And then you're still going to have Jonathan Mingo, who got 5 targets, actually. He was rolling. Terrace Marshall, you have so many options. And so I'm just hesitant because it feels like if there's not a touchdown, then you're not gonna get as much value, especially when you start adding more and more pieces back into his offense and those targets start spreading out. I don't think he's leading the team in targets every single week. He led team with 7, and so great week, great call by myself, Cody. But I think that it is limited in what you're gonna get from him. So if you can trade him and you can get back a wide receiver 3, running back 3, something like that, and somebody that's going to give you, constant flex appeal every single week, then 100% move him, go on and stream the next tight end that's going to have a big week.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more optimistic, and it's something you hit on there. Yeah, we've seen him do it in the past and then fade away, but he faded away behind Jamar Chase, behind T. Higgins, behind Joe Mixon. When I look at this Carolina Panthers offense, man, am I just not scared at all of Terrace Marshall, Jonathan Mingo, Laviska Shenault challenging for targets as much. Now, maybe he's not the target leader, but there's a path that I can read given the wide receiver bodies around him. Stu, where are you lying on this one? A little more optimistic or a little more on Terrell's side that this is a young quarterback tying himself to a tight end? Like we see that's the line, right? That's what we know happens.
Yeah, I'm kind of halfway in between. I'm with Terrell in the sense that I'm ready to trade him. If you can trade him and get anything, then 100% do that. I'm a little bit more worried about the opportunity to trade him. I don't know how interested people would get, but hey, if he's the top of every tight end waiver wire article, maybe that will influence public opinion a little bit, because in my opinion, his upside is completely capped. I wanted absolutely no part of this Panthers offense come into the season. None of those targets you guys listed are any people I'm really interested in at all. I could see some Mingo upside a little bit, but overall for me, it's one of those situations where I don't want Hayden Hurst. He's going to give you 3 for 28 to 5 for 41 every week. I don't see the touchdown upside because I think this is a bad team with a bad offensive line that isn't going to score too many touchdowns. Additionally, good defense, slow pace. I don't see much upside whatsoever with the Panthers coming into the season. I'm not a fan of their whole situation. The good thing, though, is when you have an offensive line that is that bad, right? When it's a terrible offensive line, your young quarterback has no time, he's going to have those dump offs, whether it's a Miles Sanders out there as a running back or a Hayden Hurst who's running those low A-dot receptions. The real question is, do you want your tight end to be a guy that puts up 4 for 28, 4 for 41 every week? That's within your regular upside with Hurst. It's better than a lot of these other guys, but I don't see like league winning upside. I don't see any real reason that you'd want to support him with the lack of touchdown opportunity.
We always refer to the tight end glob, that there's just a giant glob of tight ends after those top 5, 6. And each week you're just kind of pulling one out of the glob based on matchup and then throw them back in. There's hardly any reason not to start playing some matchups as we get a little bit more information on which teams are weak against the tight end this year. A player that's sitting there in the glob that I left for dead, thought he was too old, and he didn't look good, but he got 10 targets, turned it into 6 receptions for – what was it? It was only like 20-something yards, I think, for Mr. Zach Ertz there on the Arizona Cardinals. After getting 10 targets from Josh Dobbs in week 1, do either of you have any interest in Zach Ertz?
Not really. Not really. I think he's in the same – I mean, I think all these guys are in the same kind of category. That's why I'm not high on Hurst, right? Because for me, a Zach Ertz can give you that same kind of production, except you won't have to spend any fab, right? A Logan Thomas will get you that same production, but you don't have to spend any fab. The problem is McBride is still there. They're both healthy. They're both involved. McBride was running routes. He had a catch as well in that game. I don't love these 2 tight end systems, especially when one of them is a young guy that's part of your long-term plans, while the other guy is likely trade bait. I would imagine Zach Ertz ends up on a different team by the end of the season. I think he hopes so at least. But for now, if you're desperate at the tight end, you need that week-to-week volume. You don't need upside. He's probably not going to get you a touchdown, right? I mean, this Arizona Cardinals team, I think, would be lucky to get a touchdown next week. So I don't know if Zach Ertz really gives you any upside. But once again, if you need 4 catches for 42 yards, then hey, he can probably get that done this week.
Terrell, any other tight ends you're looking at on the waiver wire outside of the 2 mentioned so far this week?
Oh, man, I am scouring because as somebody who consistently, somehow, some way, if he didn't get Darren Waller, ended up punting tight end in every single league, this is where I'm at. And so he did not record. I don't think he recorded a catch, but he was wide open in the end zone and Ryan Tannehill missed him. But Chig Okongwu is the guy. He's the guy. I don't know if so at a point, Ryan Tannehill was very startable for fantasy. It was ugly, but he was startable. He was never going to kill you. He was going to get you 15 to 18 points. You wasn't going to feel bad. You was going to move on. You had a good rest of your team. I'm not 100% certain if Ryan Tannehill can get you anywhere between that. And so that's going to kill things. But Chig Okongwu is there. He did not have a good week 1, but he's coming. As Dion said, he's coming. And I'm telling you, I saw that touchdown and I felt the vibes of, oh, it's there. He's the ultimate touchdown dependent tight end. And I think he's somebody, especially if you have a good tight end matchup, that I would probably look to back Chig Okongwu in a lot of leagues. So that's definitely number 1 who I'm looking at.
I love that one. Maybe some post hype after everyone got excited, then he put up a goose egg. But with tight ends, you're looking for double-digit targets. You're looking for high touchdown upside. And we saw that touchdown from Chick this weekend. You're right, Terrell. It was there. He didn't catch it, but that touchdown was right there. So maybe sneak that one in there while people aren't looking. Let's talk quarterbacks real quick here. It's a weird week at the quarterback position on the waiver wire. Some players out there, you got your usual suspects, the Derek Carrs, the Jimmy G's, if you're playing in a one quarterback league, that are probably sitting there. But Stu, I see a poster on the wall right behind you, and I want to ask you about the quarterback for the Washington Commanders, Mr. Sam Howell. Threw for a touchdown, had a rushing touchdown, a pick out there as well during that game. Wasn't too involved on the ground outside of that sick run into the end zone there during that game. But I think Sam Howell, from what I saw, is my priority pickup at the quarterback position this week with what we saw he can do on the ground, even though they didn't utilize it that heavily. Where are you standing on Sam Howell?
It's tough. I wasn't super impressed with how the offense functioned as a whole. I was higher on Sam Howell than the majority coming into the season for kind of some of the reasons you mentioned, the rushing upside. I really wasn't very impressed with the decision-making whatsoever. A bunch of very bad throws. Obviously, you see the interceptions pop up. There were some really bad ones. One of them actually hit the defender straight in the helmet. He wasn't even expecting it. It was right at him. I wasn't impressed with Sam Howell overall. Obviously, we did get lucked out if you did start him with that rushing touchdown right there. For me, a guy like Matthew Stafford would be more of a priority if he's available on your. I'm just looking at my waiver wire. I see Stafford right there. If I had to pick between the two, the real problem is you really can't start either of these guys comfortably next week because Stafford has San Francisco and Washington has Denver. These are two defenses that you absolutely don't want to stream against, right? Two top-end defenses. So for me, I'm putting a guy like Stafford on my bench and waiting a week until we escape San Francisco as my priority on the waiver wire this week.
Speaking of San Francisco, Terrell, we look at Brock Purdy, went out there, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and I think that's about what you can probably expect from him week in, week out. Do you think there's more upside to a guy like Brock Purdy after what we saw in week 1?
Yeah, I've never been a Brock Purdy guy. I really haven't. I've tried to get there. I see the record and everything, but I just I guess it's matchup dependent, and that's where it's at. I think he's matchup dependent, and if he has a good matchup, then I'm gonna exploit it and I'm gonna take it. And his matchup really was less of him and more of the fact that Kenny Pickett gave him the ball with like 30 yards to go every single time. And so, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna put the ball in the end zone a couple times if I only got to go 10, 20, 15 yards and go score. So I don't know, man. I've never been there on Brock Purdy. I think that he's just a tad bit overrated, but more of the scheme and more of the yards after the catch. And so that's what I'm going to be looking at for teams going up against the 49ers is how are they on tackling? How are opposing receivers on yards after the catch? How are they going to be doing on that? If they're bad in those aspects, then all right, I can roll out Brock Purdy because Brock Purdy could throw the ball 2 yards and then Deebo Samuel could take it another 15, 20. Same thing with George Kittle. Same thing with Brandon Ayuk. And so that's the only way I can get behind Purdy. But just as an everyday starter, no, I don't trust him.
I'm with you, Terrell. I just don't see the upside. But I have this problem where it's the same problem I ran into with Jared Goff during the offseason. With Jared Goff, I was excited about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was excited about Sam Laporta. I was excited about Jahmyr Gibbs as a receiver. How the hell am I not going to be excited about Jared Goff? And I'm running into that same issue here. I'm excited about George Kittle. I'm excited about Deebo Samuel. I'm excited about what we saw from Brandon Ayuk in week 1, but I'm not sold on Brock Purdy being the guy that can support all of them. Stu, do you think there's more upside than maybe we're giving Purdy credit for, given the offense he's in, the weapons around him?
I don't think the upside is there, but I think the floor is there, right? I think he's a much more dependable kind of median outcome, QB 15 to QB 13 of the week. But I don't think Brock Purdy is going to give you many QB 1s of the week, especially when we look at the Shanahan system, how much it emphasizes the running back. You now have the best running back in the league there. You have Elijah Mitchell, who Shanahan loves as a backup waiting to get those red zone opportunities. For me, it's one of those situations where Purdy, he'll give you some points if you really need it on a bye week. If you're really desperate, for a quarterback, then I'd be perfectly fine picking up Purdy. But as someone that you're looking to start for the rest of the season, I don't really see the upside there.
It is a monster of a week 1 waiver wire out there. Everybody, we went through some of the biggest names, tried to identify some of that fool's gold for you as well. Good luck. It's going to be a bloodbath, but get your guys, grab some Puka Nacua, grab some Kyron Williams, and we'll see how it plays out in week 2. Before we head out here today, each of us has a week 2 player prop for you that we want to throw down. Terrell, I saw yours in the show sheet and I got excited. So I want to throw it to you first to lay out what you got for everybody this week.
Yeah, I don't follow directions. And so they asked for one. And I gave a 3-player parlay. And so here we are. We're on interceptions. And what I love to do in week 2 is I love to fade the people that everybody forgot that was either led the league in interceptions or very close to leading the league in interceptions. Dak Prescott led the league in interceptions. Dak Prescott took it, didn't even throw much against the Giants team that gave them the ball and did the scoring for them, honestly. So now he's getting a Jets defense that one player on the Jets this week cashed his 3-interception, $250,000 incentive in 1 week.
1 week.
And he's not even the best. He's not even the best defensive back on the team. Okay, good luck. Dak throw an interception. Death taxes Stafford interception, easy enough. Going against the 49ers, Stafford interception. That's leg number 2. Third leg, Tua going up against Bill. I'm telling you, Bill's going to scheme something. Tua look really good with all those air yards. But so Tua, Dak, Matthew Stafford, 3-team parlay, all of them throw an interception.
Raining on all your fun with that interception parade, but getting some money with it. I love it, Terrell. Stu, what you got for us? Hit us with your week 2 player prop.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm 100% tailing that spot. That's a great angle. For me, I'm going to the Thursday night game. I'm going TJ Hawkinson over 4.5 receptions. Soared over this in the first game, had a 9-target outing. And what I really like about this, I expect the Vikings to once again be in a negative game script. They're going to be playing from behind, very likely for a majority of this game. And where did this Eagles team funnel defenses? It's right over the middle. They have one of the strongest secondaries in the league. They rated out as a top 3 secondary, pretty much with every metric you look at last season, coming back very strong once again. It funnels those targets over the middle. TJ Hawkinson had an incredibly low ADOT, right? So when you look at that bad Vikings offensive line, who's going to benefit from those checkdowns? It's going to be Hawkinson. We saw 9 targets in week 1, and I'd expect very similar volume again for week 2. So 4.5 receptions seems like great value to me.
I love that one as well. And I'm going to throw one at you guys too to end this one out. After seeing that Jets defense last night, I'm taking Tony Pollard under his 70.5 rushing yards next week going up against that New York Jets D line. I just don't think he quite gets it done. That's a pretty high total for a running back. I know Pollard's good. He's got the wheels, but I don't see it happening against that Jets defense. All right, well, guys, that is going to be it for us today. Thank you, everybody, for coming and hanging out with us. We'll be back next week and tomorrow at the same time. I'll be here back with Terrell and our friend Steezy A. Smith going over some week 2 stuff for you guys. Hit some of those stacks and help you out with your DFS lineups. Until then, though, make sure you follow Sportstopia on Twitter at Sportstopia HQ and subscribe to the Fantasy Fire and Ice podcast anywhere podcasts can be found. And make sure you don't miss any of Terrell and Stu dropping straight facts on you guys on Tuesdays, helping you win some of that cash. Until tomorrow, though, we are out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Adios, everyone.